Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's council meeting. I'd like to also welcome the viewing audience on Rogers Cable, who are covering tonight's meeting for us. Instead of having to rely on ourselves as the choir today, we have the privilege of having the Trillium Public School Choir here to lead us in O Canada, along with their fan club. Parents and other family members and friends who are here to support all of you. So welcome, boys and girls, and if I can ask everyone to stand as they're able to join in the singing of our national anthem. Thank you very much, boys and girls. You certainly did. Not that the people around the horseshoe and the staff normally don't do a great job, but it's much better when we have a group such as yourselves here to sing it. So thank you for joining us, and I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season. All the best. And of course, you are more than welcome to stay for the whole meeting if you like, but we won't be offended if you may want to go on to other things. Okay, well, with that then, it's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis that the minutes of the regular meeting held November 6, 2017, and the special meetings held November 6th, 20th, 27th, and December 4th is mailed to the Mayor and Councillors be accepted. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, there being none. Councillor Singh.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, on the item from committees related to the part study for Rockaway, my parents own some property or in that coverage area, so I would declare a conflict and not include myself in any conversation related to that item.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted. Any others? There being none, unless otherwise directed, I'll refer any communications as listed on the agenda. There's none listed, so we don't need to worry about that. And there are no presentations listed, but there is a presentation we're going to be making this evening. And from time to time, we have the opportunity to acknowledge a member of council for their time period on City Council. And earlier this month, our colleague John Gazzola celebrated his 15th anniversary of being on City Council, first elected in a by-election on December the 2nd, filling the vacancy that former council member Jim Ziegler filled when he became a Justice of the Peace. So, John, if I can invite you up to present you with a certificate and congratulate you on 15 years of elected service to our community, and many more years as a staff person before that. Okay, we'll move on then to delegations. Under Council's Rule of Procedure, previously registered delegations will now be heard, and I want to remind everyone that they have 5 minutes to make their presentation. The first item under delegations is pertaining to the closing of a public highway. Notice has been given for any member of the public to speak for or against the bylaw to close the public highway known as an unnamed public lane, Plan 262, lying between Ottawa Street and Lot 124, adjacent to 161 Ottawa Street South, listed as items 11N and 14N. And is anybody here to speak to that item? Is anybody here to speak to the issue of the closure of the unnamed public lane? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. I suppose we can leave it until later on. We'll leave it till the bylaws then to deal with it at that time. We'll now move on then to item B, Megan Bell, regarding a dog designation appeal committee recommendation listed as item B2 on the committee of the whole agenda. Ms. Bell. No, Ms. Bell's not here. Okay, we'll come back to her if she comes between now and when we deal with committee of the whole. We'll then move on to item B3. We have 2 delegations here, and it's in regards to the Heritage Kitchener, one is regards to a minor variance application for 121 Westmount Road, so we'll start with that one. Mr. John Florence. Welcome, Mr. Florence.
Good evening, Your Worship, honorable councillors and staff. My name is John Florence. I'm the president and co-founder of Florence Signs and LED of Cambridge. It's a great time of year to give thanks, and first of all, we just wanted to thank the sign department staff, planning department, and committee of adjustment for approval of our minor variance application on behalf of Forest Hill United Church. And we trust council will agree with their thoughtful recommendations. In a nutshell, what we basically have done is we've have a little, there's a picture, I'm not sure if you received them in your agenda.
It's up on the screen, sir.
Pardon me?
It's up on the screen.
Oh, okay, thank you. Goes to show you this time of year, we need to look up. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Anyways.
Good line, though.
Yeah, thanks. Basically, so what we have done is we've redesigned some tired graphics that were there at the church. The church was established in 1960, so we're long-term serving the community in the Forest Hill area there. What we have done is we're hoping to change the old style hand changeable plastic letters. You've probably seen a lot of signs where they put the plastic letters in, and it makes it a little difficult in February to do that. But we're changing that to a brand new LED message center, and all within the existing sign box that's there. The church years ago built a beautiful sign box. It's actually stainless steel. I tell you the truth, 45 years in this business, and I've never seen a stainless steel sign box before. But anyways, there's a lot of aluminum and wood and all kinds of steel, but anyways, there's no increase in size of the sign, and significantly there's no change to the Forest Hills decorative permanent stone base. So what we've done is kept everything within the existing sign frame. And of course, the municipality would like us to put the address on, 121. See, when they have their committee meetings, they get to order pizza. So pizza guys got to find them, I guess. But anyways, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I have Murray Gordon here from the church, so if you have any questions, we'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Okay, thank you to both of you for coming in this evening. We do have some questions. First of all, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you very much for coming in and supporting your application. Mr. Mayor, I'd just be happy to move the application. I have no questions to the delegations. I'm in agreement with the Committee of Adjustment recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yes, I had just keyed in to move the motion as well. I'm supportive of it. The city itself and its community centers have taken a similar action in converting our signs to digital, and it just makes sense. It's far more efficient. I think the only concern that could have been is the timing of the sign, but the report states it's between 10 p.m. and 6 p.m. would be turned off, and that's great. So we'd be supportive of the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? It's been moved by Councillor Yanetsky. Is there a seconder? Councillor Fernandez. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well. We also have Mr. Ron Bender here with respect to Committee of the Whole item B3, Williamsburg gas station sign. And were you looking to speak, Ron, or no? Maybe? Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't intending to, but I'm here in support of that, and also we have another item on the agenda tonight, so
Yes.
just here if there's questions.
Yep, and I will come back to you on the Heritage Kitchener one. Anything on the sign? Any questions? Somebody want to move it? Moved by Councillor Singh, seconder Councillor Schneider. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's the second part of number 3. Councillor Ioannidis. Okay. Great, and I'll come back to you shortly on the heritage application. Thank you. So that's been approved. We'll now move to Vanessa Hicks, who's here regarding 51 David Street. Welcome, Ms. Hicks.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Verbanovic and members of council. My name is Vanessa Hicks, and I am a heritage planner with MHBC, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of our client, Vive Development, and the applicant for the proposed development at 51 David Street. Thank you. As the property is located within the Victoria Area Heritage Conservation District, the proposed development was brought forward to the Heritage Advisory Committee on December 5th of this year. At this meeting, the Heritage Advisory Committee supported staff recommendations to approve the heritage application for the proposed development. The property at 51 David Street is a vacant lot located mid-block between Cortland Avenue West and Joseph Street, east of Victoria Park. The Victoria Heritage Conservation District is made of several sub-areas, each area having its own streetscape and community character. The David Street streetscape and character can be described as being dominated by high-density multi-residential buildings of contemporary designs, some of which you can see on this image here in front of you. The two properties located directly adjacent to the subject lands can be described as parking lots as part of contemporary high-rise residential buildings. Therefore, the immediate context of the subject property, which is vacant, is not identified as containing significant built heritage resources. The character of David Street is considerably different than other subareas of the Heritage Conservation District, which includes Victoria Park, the Queen Street streetscape, and other low-rise density residential neighborhoods west of Victoria Park. The proposed development was well received by the Heritage Advisory Committee on December 5th, with some discussion of committee members regarding the proposed materials, which includes glazing and metal. I would like the opportunity to address the proposed use of materials here before Council. The policies of the Victoria Park Heritage Conservation District Plan presumes that new development will occur along the Queen Street streetscape. The policy provides that materials typical of the historic area, such as brick, shall be used. The intent of this policy is to ensure that a range of materials used for the new development are complementary to the surrounding context. The use of brick would be appropriate for some areas in the Heritage Conservation District, but not this particular area. As I already demonstrated, there are different sub-areas of the district, and the use of brick is not dominant within this particular area of the district, and therefore the use of brick is less appropriate, in my opinion, for this area. I have demonstrated here that the east side of David Street between Cortland Avenue and Joseph is dominated by medium to high-rise density contemporary buildings. This has resulted in the character of the David Street streetscape being distinctly different than that of the rest of Victoria Park. It is our opinion that the proposed materials, which are of high quality, contemporary in design, and of a neutral color palette, are appropriate for this context. This discussion regarding materials and the support for glazing and metal were reiterated in the staff report presented to the Heritage Advisory Committee on December 5th. Our Heritage Impact Assessment has assessed the proposed development and concluded that it conforms to the Victoria Park Heritage Conservation District Plan and will not result in negative impacts to the district. The Heritage Permit application for the proposed development has been approved by the Heritage Advisory Committee. I am here in support of the staff and the committee recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the Heritage Permit application or Heritage Impact Assessment. And should you have any questions related specifically to the design or things of that nature, I'm also joined here today by Leigh Robinson of Neo Architecture, if you have any questions for him as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in this evening. We do have a couple of councillors with questions for you. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Hicks. Was brick considered for this building, Ms. Hicks?
I think that would probably be better answered by Laird, if you don't mind.
The short answer would be that yes, it was considered, and it was seen as technically challenged on a site of this nature. There's a great deal of detail I could go into on the process of erecting a masonry building, but through a need for a non-combustible exterior material, and given the confinement of the site, the pragmatics of a full masonry building was seen as inappropriate. I can add, however, that masonry has been added to the building on the pedestrian level, which would be the main floor of the building, to respond to some of the brick within the context of the neighborhood.
So it has been added to the ground floor?
It is used for the ground floor material. Masonry is.
It's red brick or red brick?
Red? Not red. No.
No, I just wondered, I wanted your opinion, or both of your opinion. Do you feel it's important to match building materials like brick to surrounding buildings? Ms. Hicks mentioned a few of the buildings around here, but there is brick on the other side of this building, on the Kitchener housing buildings. There's even brick on this side of the picture on the entranceway to the garage, the underground garage of Drullo, and there's brick over the rear of the site in the seniors' home. So there's a considerable amount of brick around there that was not mentioned by Ms. Hicks.
So to address that, on a first point, I can suggest that masonry versus a color of masonry is a discussion around complexity and aesthetics and city building and monotony and variety and that discourse, which again we could speak at length about architecturally and historically. To be mimetic of history is something else that is not really relevant. I'm not a supporter of faking history. I believe that we build today for today and the vision of the future, not to copy the past, to respect the past, but not mimic it. This building uses the materials of the base of masonry relative to the context around it. The color chosen is actually contextually referencing neighboring buildings other than the red brick building. Our building behind the Victoria Housing Project is a yellow. The Drullo building is a gray and a salmon color. So again, I think the materiality and the scale, the texture is more important than the color. Color, if it was said to be only monolithic and monochromatic, our cities would be rather unfortunate. So every building is looked at individually for its own composition of materials and aesthetics. And in this case, the reference was a contemporary aesthetic that feeds off of some of the context around the site itself. So I feel that there is both a respect and a nod to the district and the suggestion of the masonry, but the consideration of the entire building being clad in masonry was put to bed a while ago.
Okay. I didn't mean to go overboard on the red brick. I meant to talk just to talk about brick, because on pages 103 and 117 of the Heritage Report, it clearly states that materials typical of historic areas such as brick should be used. That's what I was getting at.
Yes, and we are in a district that is adjacent to the Heritage District, but not profoundly within the Heritage District. Our neighbors are poured concrete, painted. We have siding on a building that is part of the Victoria Housing. We have a very brown brick building that's in behind us, very monolithic. And then we do have the replication of some form of historicism next door to us, and then the original Victoria School. And it is in the combination of all of those together that we create the urban fabric that makes the world a more interesting place.
I agree. You are in the Heritage District.
Yes.
This building is in the Heritage District.
Yes, and the amount of heritage that is within our immediate context is very limited. And that it's that divide between Park and Joseph and further down to Cortland and further down, it's an area that is a mix of transitional architecture as well as some leftover historicism. As I said, if I was building it on the other side towards Victoria Lake, it would be a totally different discussion.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we have...
Mr. Mayor, I had questions of staff, but I can wait.
Yeah, I'll come back to you if you can buzz in again. Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, from the looks of this picture, it looks like we're looking at a height that's probably 2 stories higher than, let's say, for example, the David Street buildings when I'm looking, let's call that south of this building. Would that be about correct?
If you're looking at the David Street housing project that is to the north of our site, that is a 4-story building, and our building is 6 stories.
Okay. When you showed, or when Ms. Hicks showed the previous slides, it sort of skewed our sight line in terms of where this building was going to be fronting. Because if you go back to the slides where you showed the vacant lot, it didn't show there. I mean, are you telling me that that yellow building is the only thing beside this vacant lot? Or is the David Street Kitchener housing properties?
Go forward one. If you look at that one, you can see how on one side of our building is the Drulo parking lot. Mm-hmm. On the other side of our building is the parking lot for Victoria Place.
Right. Okay.
And then there's the Victoria Housing Project.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
So it stands somewhat isolated in between parking lots.
Okay. What was the rationale for going to, I mean, I see that you've got significant building height behind the frontage on David Street, but what was the rationale for going to this height on David Street in relation to what you would see if you went towards Victoria Lake? Was it a cost benefit?
It's maximizing the development potential of the site within the parameters of what is a reasonably sized building. We are only slightly taller than the David Street housing, and next to that, the Victoria housing behind us is 9 stories. The Victoria Place building is, I believe, 9 or maybe 7. Trulo's is 12. So in the context that surrounds us, we're not a tall building. Mm-hmm. When it came to David Street itself and the park, the intent was to step the building down to meet the guidelines of the height along David and to diminish the size of the building and presence of it, looking at it from Victoria Commons. So its scale is diminished along the street facade, and the stepping back effect really helps keep it scaled to the street.
And I would agree with you that if you're standing in front of the building or directly across the street, the scale is not as large. But coming at it from both sides of David Street, that is a very large mass structure in terms of massing, is it not?
It is not in scale more significant than Victoria Housing and the Drulo Tower in any dimension. So I think the fact that it presents itself as a narrow frontage on David is the way that it diminishes itself. It does have depth, but its plan dimension, if you look at the Victoria Housing Project, the width of the piece of David Street in both buildings is longer than our building is deep. And the Drulo building beside us is longer than we are deep and is significantly taller. So in context, it's actually a petite building.
Okay, I don't want to compare it to the Drulo building because I have ongoing issues with Drulo buildings. So let's not compare it to that. What I don't see, and I think it's very unfortunate, is the feeling of as you look on the David Street properties to the top of the graph, the photograph here, where you've got a little bit of lawn, it feels a little bit more welcoming. You've got this building literally right on the street front, I think as close as you possibly can get, which again gives you that feeling of mass right at the street entrance. Does that not, like, I don't understand how that would fit in with the heritage character of that area.
The front facade is on the same plane as David Street housing.
Can we go to the next picture to see that? Is there a picture that shows that?
So that facade of our building is in line with the facade of the David Street housing. It sits as close to the sidewalk as the David Street housing.
It does not look like that from this picture at all.
Well, it is in site plan. We are both sitting on our setback line. And it was about forming the urban street and the request to place the building close to David Street.
Okay.
There are, if, and it's not likely to happen, but if the parking lots were developed, the building would slide into an urban wall along David Street, and its depth is only perceived by the fact that there happens to be a vacant site beside it. But parceled up adjacent to the other buildings, I think it would seem less, that it's more visible in the fact that there is the space on either side. So we are combating the fact that we are surrounded by parking lots, but we have addressed the street facade in its width and its height and its placement to be the same as the David Street housing project.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So if you want to buzz in again, if you have further questions, Councillor Gazzola?
Just a couple of questions. Is it possible to move it back on the lot from where it is? Was that
It would be against staff's recommendation.
to move it further back?
Yes.
Okay. My second question is, it would going to brick, is that greatly increase the cost, or is there any? Would there be any cost differential?
I would say that it would be a great increase in cost on two fronts. One is the material cost itself per square foot, and the second is the labor intensity to install the masonry versus the siding. The third point, which I alluded to originally, was technically we would have to be on the neighboring properties to erect a masonry exterior. So there's a technical issue with that as a solution.
But could you not normally deal with that sort of a situation?
I'm sorry?
Could you say in order to construct it, you would have to work from neighboring properties. Does that never happen, or?
No, not usually. There's, it's usually a craned site when you are building with a zero lot setback. Our site is not designed to be built with a crane. So it's a wood frame structure. There's a pragmatic sort of technical process to build the building. And the solution that we had to deal with right from the beginning was a system that was both a rated material on the outside for fire reasons and able to be installed as the building is erected.
Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. And my question was primarily going to be dealing with the front and how it's proportional to the housing that's in that area, and you did address that. I guess my other question is dealing with heritage properties in particular. Was it not your firm that did the Kitchener Housing Project?
It was my previous firm, yes.
Okay, so you have some experience in working in this heritage district then?
Yes, and I sat on Heritage for 6 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? If not, thank you to both of you for coming in. We'll now deal with this item on the Heritage agenda, and it's under December. Oh, questions of staff. Thank you. Councillor Etherington.
Who am I speaking to, Mr. Chair?
Mr. May, I think, is going to attempt to answer these for you.
Okay. I guess my only question is, in the Heritage Report of December the 5th, where this was approved, on page 1.3, as I mentioned, and I believe it's 117, there are these crystal clear mentions of brick. The brick should be used. And I already had that question answered in part, but I just wanted a I was looking for a response from our own heritage people on that particular question. It's quite clear in our staff reports. So I just wondered what happened there.
Mr. Mayor?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure that all councillors have the report in front of you, but Appendix B of that staff report has the specific policies that are contained within the Heritage District Plan. And I think what's really important here is that context matters when developing buildings. And so a lot of the Heritage District Plan was focused on the Queen Street South properties, because when the plan was built, it was anticipated that that's where development would happen. This block is very different than the Queen Street South context. Here we don't have buildings on the other side of the street. They are much larger properties. As the delegation's already noted, there are a mix of designs and materials already on this block. And so, I think it is important to take the entirety of the Heritage District Plan. It not only allows for different materials in places like this block, it actually encourages contemporary design. It calls it, and I quote, the heritage of tomorrow. So this Heritage District Plan encourages contemporary design and allows for this type of material given the context of this particular property.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my other question has to do with, Mr. Mayor, it looks down on the common area, it looks down on the one of few remaining heritage trinkets in the city, which is our logo, the clock tower, and it looks across the common at, I presume, the areas of, or the more typical areas you're talking about in the Victoria Park heritage area across on Richmond. Don't you think that would make a difference on the appearance of this building?
So through you, Mr. Chair, again, the context of this block is very different than some of the other blocks facing those heritage attributes. As an example, I mean, we've heard about the Drullo apartment building. This is not an extremely tall building when taken in context of this block. The step back is something staff try to get developers to do on a regular basis, and in this case we've been successful. It has a significant impact on the look and feel of the building and the surrounding properties.
Thank you. And I have comments when we get there, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So we'll deal with item number 1 on the Heritage Kitchener report for December 5th. Who's bringing that forward? Councillor Gazzola?
Yes, it has been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ioannidis that pursuant to Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Heritage Permit Application HPA 2017 V035 be approved to permit the construction of a 6-story multiple residential building on the property municipally addressed as 51 David Street, as outlined in Community Services Department Report CSD 17098, and in accordance with the plans and supplementary information submitted with the application, and subject to the following condition, and that is that the final building permit drawings be reviewed and heritage clearance provided by heritage planning staff prior to issuance of a building permit. I'd like to ask, when we deal with this, for a recorded vote, and if I could make a quick comment.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, this was dealt with a Heritage Committee last week, and it was not a unanimous vote, and that's why it was here. I think the vote was something like 6-3. I'm not sure the exact number. I did not support it at Heritage Committee, and I will not support it tonight because to me it looks too ultra-modern. It just doesn't fit in with the entire district. And we're looking at, we have to keep in mind the entire district, not just one street or one section of it. And for that reason, I think, to me, I just can't it doesn't seem to me to fit in there. And it's amazing when we've had situations like this that if we look hard enough and try hard enough, that we can make things fit a little better than we have. But I don't think we were able to do that on this occasion.
Councillor Netsky.
I've looked at this plan very closely, and having sat on Heritage Committee meetings through many, many years, talking to Heritage spokespeople who are very familiar with backgrounds and creating policies that we have here, I like the proposal, and I think the building's a nice-looking building. Unfortunately, it's in the wrong spot, and that's in Victoria Hills Secondary District Conservation Area. The policies of the plan talk about certain features for new buildings, and these features do fit in nicely if this building happened to be on the Queen Street side, which is facing the major road. But here we have a property that is in the most prime location facing Victoria Park itself. I mean, right across the street is the park, not another street or two that you got to get to, but the park itself. And it's got the best exposure if anybody's in the park there. Now, the building, in terms of setback, it meets, complies with the setbacks of other properties in the street. No issue there. It's set back and tiered back for 6 stories in height. I have no concern on that compared to the other buildings immediately beside it. So in a way, it does fit in terms of density and that type of style of planning. However, in terms of materials, it doesn't have, like bricks is one of the topics that have been, items that have been discussed. Very little. Bricks should be used. I mean, it says shall be used in the policies. That doesn't say could be or should or would be. It shall be. That's a must. And it doesn't comply. Yet we have also height and materials in terms of looking at mansard roofs, gables, varying finishes and textures. This new design does not even comply with that. Then we also have the design of the building in terms of massing and scale materials. Again, as noted, it doesn't meet materials. So this building, even though it looks good and should be located elsewhere, clearly does not fit into this location as a prime lot right across the street from Victoria Park. And it does not meet the policies of the Victoria Park Conservation District, in my opinion.
Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks. I certainly can appreciate the architect's presentation today and his idea that, the whole idea of making everything look the same and bringing some uniqueness to the area is probably a good way of thinking, and certainly makes it very unique. I think my concern when I look at this building is and it's probably the side view. Maybe if I was standing in front of it, I wouldn't feel that it makes me think of a couple of Lego blocks, with no disrespect to your architectural expertise. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more greenery, and maybe that will happen through the site plan. Maybe you'll make it look a little bit more amenable to the street frontage. I don't think that the parking lot's going to change into a development if that's visitor parking for the building and beside. Maybe Heritage Committee said that this fits in because of the uniqueness of the style, and we're transitioning from some more traditional looking buildings to something a bit more newer, and trying to get as many residents to live in the area close to the park. I can certainly respect that. Unfortunately, maybe it's just my own personal subjective opinion. When I hear my colleagues talk about some of the heritage features that maybe could have been added into this building, maybe that would have made it again look very monoculture, and that's what you're trying to get away from. So I'm not going to be able to support it at this time unless I was to see something a little bit more distinguishing in the frontage that makes it feel a little bit more like that walkable community. Right now, I feel like it's just that garage that's right out front, and that's all we're seeing is the concrete, the garage, and the podiums. Appreciate the setback in an effort to make it not look quite as large of a mass on that frontage.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. I have quite the contrary opinion from what we've just heard in the comments. When I see a building that has good design, and I hear it's in the wrong spot, a good building is a good building. Doesn't matter what site where it's at. It's a good building. And when you have our Heritage Committee who is in support of it, and then on top of that you have our staff that are supportive of it, and then not only that, you have the architect who's has experience in this district and whose firm was responsible for the property with Kitchener Housing. I do respect the design, and when you go online and you look at heritage districts and you see from other communities, and for example, I can quote infill design from the region of Waterloo, and it's basically saying in heritage properties, contemporary buildings can coexist with its heritage neighbors if the design is respectful and innovative, and I think it is. It can go on and on online. There's even firms that are, even from very rich heritage countries in Europe, they show lots of examples in heritage areas with modern contemporary buildings. And I've heard that around here often, that's a standard we should be following. So I think you're right in line with that. And so I wholeheartedly support this. I think this is a great addition to the Heritage District, and it's just going to be, and whether it's a prime lot, that's regardless of whether or not it's a prime lot. It's a good design, and I think it will support it, so I will support it.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for this report. One of the things I've done is taken a look at Google Maps, and you're able to see the streetscape. And in this particular case, it shows the building that was there. I think the building that you're proposing is an attractive building. I think it fits in. When I checked the streetscape on David from Cortland to Joseph, I think it's a really good fit, and I think you've tried hard to, pay attention to compatibility in terms of color and the step back. I think it's a nice fit for this particular stretch of David Street.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've already said some of this. I think in any heritage area, maximum effort should be used to use materials like brick, sympathetic to and matching to surrounding buildings. I don't think enough efforts have been made. It sounds like some have, but they've not been made in this case. A good example of what happens when you don't make those efforts, to me, a good example is the Drulo building next door. The complete loss of housing, the demolitions from David Street back to Queen Street on one side there where Drulo built the high-rise. Those houses were demolished, about 8 homes, I think. And that was as a result of former councils, in my opinion, lack of effort to protect those buildings. I should also say that I really do appreciate the efforts to tear this building back on a narrow lot and efforts made to fit that particular lot. There's a history here. The other thing that I truly appreciate is that the developer worked very hard a number of years ago to rid us of one of the most notorious former crack houses in the city that stood on this site, and went to considerable effort to get rid of that particular horrible building. So I also appreciate that. But I think it's ironic that this building should be on a lot that overlooks, as I said, the clock tower on the common area of Victoria Park. Clock tower is all that's left of our beautiful old City Hall, which again, a former council voted to demolish. And looking at the clock tower, I would have thought we would make more effort on sites like this on David Street to do our very best to match them to surrounding buildings and bring back some of that heritage loss. I'm going to oppose this development, and in part I regret that, but I'm going to oppose it because I think it could have been far better on this particular site.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'll support this. I struggle with it a bit because by the time it gets to us, I do really wonder what the original vision of the property owner had for this site and how many iterations it went through and how close this is to the actual vision that the person that owns the property wanted to see here. To reduce the massing, the building's been stepped back. They've put some masonry on the base level, and they've, as we've heard through the presentations, they went through extraordinary lengths to make sure that the colors match within the restrictions of the site. Heritage Committee passed this. One of the designers behind it sat on that Heritage Committee for 6 years. If projects like this can't get through, I fear for developers that want to develop in the downtown area of the city of Kitchener, what else can they possibly do to try and meet the regulations that we impose upon them? It seems like we're getting towards the point where we're going to hand them a piece of paper and say, I know it's your property, but we're telling you what to build. This is what we want you to build. Never mind that you actually own the property. We have to be lenient somewhat in our approvals. So the litmus test here is, do they go through the lengths, the extensive process to try and meet our demands? Yes, they did. And on the most base level, if I lived across the street from this building or in this building, I would be more than content. So, I mean, we got to step back sometimes and realize the implications that we're putting on the potential developers in the downtown of this city and whether we're pushing them away or whether we're accommodating them.
Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And absolutely agree with most points that Councillor Davey has pointed out, and that's absolutely clear, giving more certainty to the developer what's expected of them. One thing I do see out of this proposal, I don't think there is any leniency being given. I think the developer is trying to meet a very high standard and has come close as possibly able on a very constrained site. Councillor Etherington has said that the developer has done good service to the city from what it was, and that's absolutely true. There's been difficulty in developing this lot for a long time and has sat as a vacant lot because of the constraint of size of lot it is. And the developer, what they're proposing right now meets the desire of the city to get the right level of density, but in keeping with the heritage attributes that's asked of any development proposal near or inside of a heritage district. So what more can the developer really do? So I think we have to be reflective of all those points, and I think Councillor Davies done a good job of laying out what's been already expected of the developer and that they have met our requirements. So only to say no for the sake of saying no, I think it's unfair. This is a good design based on the restriction of the lot size. And I think the developer's done a good job with their designer to meet our requirements. And this needs to be complemented and supported.
Any other comments? If not, I'll make my own, and I will say that certainly in my lifetime I've seen a lot of developments, some that quite frankly are not very good, and some that are. And in looking at this, I look at it and think of the surrounding area, and I can't help but feel that this, in fact, is a very good and well-designed development. And in some respects, it's unfortunate, and they always say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's unfortunate that what is a good development and one that's attempted to balance the priorities that the city has set, including the step back and so on, that it's hearing some of the negativity that's being expressed. I think of areas, other sort of high-profile areas, such as Colonel By Drive in Ottawa, where there are many heritage homes, but there are a number of them that have had new, modern-looking additions that have been put on them, and that's probably one of the most high-profile areas in the country, and they look outstanding. And, I believe that as a member of council, knowing that this building will be across from one of the jewels of our community, Victoria Park, I believe that it will actually be an addition to the area of the park and the overall streetscape that exists there. Maintaining heritage is important. There's no question about that. But I do have to agree with the architect that maintaining heritage doesn't mean that everything you build has to be a copy of the way things were done 100 years ago. And, there will be new architectural styles that are being implemented today that 50 or 100 years from now will be the heritage of the 21st century. And I think we have achieved the right balance here, and I certainly am hopeful that while it's clear it's not going to be unanimous, I certainly hope that this is going to pass and be able to move forward, especially in light of the fact that it has achieved both the support of staff and the Heritage Committee. So if there aren't any further comments, a recorded vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to... we have a delegation here, actually, Councillor Gazzola, for the Fisher-Hallman Road one. So I'll go to that one next. So number 2, Heritage Kitchener, with respect to Fisher-Hallman Road, and Mr. Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't need to make a presentation, but I'm here in support and can answer any questions if there are any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Bender? If not, thank you. Councillor Gazzola, can you bring forward, we'll just deal with that one and then we'll... Okay, go ahead. sorry, I hadn't clicked you in. My apologies.
Yeah. When you spoke the last time and you mentioned the word negativity, you know, if we have different views, who's to say which one is positive and which one is negative? It is okay to have different points of view. I hope we don't have to argue about that.
Absolutely agree with you. That's why I said, you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah. But what's to say one's positive, one's negative? Anyhow, we have two situations here where there's we're looking for demolition permits, and in both cases, I just want to point out that the main properties are not being demolished. It's just some appendages to the properties that have been added later in the term of those properties, and so with this, it's something that we have to deal with, and the best way for this council to deal with it is just to let the application run its course, and then we're both. Staff and Heritage Committee have no concerns that in both cases the developers are going to maintain and restore the main heritage properties. Okay, so I'll start with the first one. The first one is in accordance with Section 27(3) of the Ontario Heritage Act, that the written notice of intention to demolish dated October the 20th, 2017, regarding the property principally addressed as 1940 Fisher Hallman Road, as outlined in Community Services Department Report CSD 17-103, be received for information, and that the notice period run its course. And if I can read the other one, it's exactly the same wording, and the date in this case was October the 5th, 2017, and it relates to 1 Queen Street North, which is the old American Hotel. And again, the main structure is being maintained. What they're dealing with are some of the appendages that were added later on. So,
okay, thank you.
And that was moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ioannidis.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gazzola. Any discussion? If not, those in favor? Opposed? They're both carried. It's been approved. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Bender. We'll now move on then to the tenders. Can I have somebody move the tenders? Moved by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Seconder, Councillor Schneider. Any questions on the sewer safety cross-bore inspection program? On that one, Councillor Gazzola?
Yes, just a general question. I don't understand where I can't quite appreciate when we do a job. Do we not have to get someone to check where the lines are before we start our project, like everybody else is? And if we do that, don't we see exactly where the sewer lines are and where our lines, so that we know whether they're going through the sewer or not? I'm just questioning the necessity of going this route.
Who can help with that? Ms. Fletcher?
So this is standard work that we've tendered out for years. When we have a sewer blockage, we need to do a safety inspection to make sure that it is not a gas pipe that is coming in into the work area. So this tender is really for emergency situations, to have a contractor augment what the City of Kitchener Utilities staff would do.
Bless you. Thank you. Ms. Palmer, did you want to add anything? Or? No? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Gazzola.
No,
Seems the sneezes are
I just I thought it would be apparent when they come in and they draw the lines as to where everything is, so we know where the lines are. Why do we have to call in another party to deal with it? That's my question. Yes.
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the Mayor, we do have as-built drawings, But any time that we are going to excavate, we have to do an inspection to make sure that nothing has changed. So rather than excavating, we need to do an inspection to just verify where the gas line is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on with the tenders. The rubber-tired articulated loader, any questions? GPS. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I'm a little bit uncomfortable, and I understand the rationale in the report around the concept of sole sourcing, but I really do think that to be transparent and accountable, that we should be putting out a tender. It just, I think it doesn't look good publicly when we don't have at least another one or two tenders or bids on some of the work that's being done within our city. So I guess that's more of a comment, I apologize, than a question. I am glad to see, though, that it is coming in under budget.
Ms. Palmer, you'd like to add something?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I apologize if it's not a question, but I was just going to point out in the report that back when engineering selected this product, it was through a competitive process.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola on this one? Okay,
Yes, I had asked staff about this, and I'm told, I tried to figure it out, that who is it, Trimble are the manufacturers, and Cancel are the distributors? I just, is that right? I'm
Ms. Palmer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
And they're the only distributors in the country. Can we not go directly to the manufacturer in a case like this? Why do we have to go through a third person?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so often manufacturers set up distribution systems. In this case, they have partnered with CanSell, and they will not sell to us directly.
Okay. Vehicle, sorry, on the next one, Councillor Gazzola? Okay, vehicle rust control services.
I'm just curious as to why we don't do this ourselves. Is this a great deal different than we do our own oil changes and all our other maintenance things on our vehicles? This is just another maintenance job, is it not? I just wonder why why we contract it out.
Mr. Reedman.
Through the mayor. So my understanding is this is a specialized piece of equipment that's only used one time per year per vehicle. So it would be more cost effective for us to contract out this work than to acquire that type of equipment for the limited usage that we have.
Okay. On the tandem rear axle conventional cab. On the domestic natural gas meters, Councillor Gazzola.
Okay, again, I checked with staff on this today, and I found it very interesting. And the last question that I asked staff is that if how much does our contractor charge us to do it? And you gave me the answer of $94, and I said, when our staff does it, what is the cost? And you said $186. So right away, when I looked at that, I said, my thoughts are, why aren't we contracting them all out?
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the mayor, so I'm not privy to the calculations that staff would have done to give you those numbers. I don't have those in front of me. I can only imagine, though, that the scope between staff and the contractor would be slightly different. So, for instance, when we put a tender out, we have a very, very defined scope that the contractor would do for that $94. Our staff, when they go out to install meters or set meters, they're doing other things as well. So I would have to double check whether they've stripped out and it's a true apples to apples comparison that you've got there.
That's fine, but I think it's well worth looking at if that is the case. So you take 6,000 of these meters annually at 94 versus 186, it's a substantial amount of dollars.
Councillor Yunetsky on this one? No? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So, Councillor Gazzola has raised a good point. Obviously, I think more information is necessary. So, how do we proceed forward? Council would be okaying the tender, but what if, in fact, that is only work that we're doing and there is a cost difference? Could we, at a later point, as we get more information from staff, even if this is approved through council, and then this could be looked at differently afterwards, once more information has been looked at?
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the Mayor, any one of our services that we have in-house staff or contracted services, we're continually doing reviews to determine what the balance should be related to in-house services or whether it's more cost-effective to contract out. So in this case, I can only imagine that when staff was asked the question, how much does it cost us to do something, they've included other things in that cost.
Okay, well, that gives me confidence that staff are already doing that analysis, but for the comfort of council, if that can be further expanded on and information provided to all of council so we can look exactly how that was determined. And work is done when on-site visits are made, apart from just installing the meter.
Ms. Palmer, did you want to add something or not to that one? No? Okay, Councillor Yunetsky, which one were you?
Number 2. Did we miss it?
We did it already. The articulated loader?
Yeah, my question comes down to, on that, is that in the recommendation has got a certain figure of 273,000 and change, and yet the bid is 232. And is there an error somewhere in the calculations?
Ms. Palmer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say yes. The amount that's in the recommendation is correct. I would say it's not reflected correctly in the chart that you see.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the answer. Which one's correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the amount that's in the recommendation is correct.
Yeah, but the bid is much lower.
I'm happy to, I believe the chart is the error, but what's in the recommendation aligns with the financial report, and I believe that is the correct amount.
Okay.
Okay, is that all the questions then? So they have been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the tenders? Oh, sorry, Councillor Marsh? No? Okay. All those in favor, opposed? That's carried. I'm going to deal with Planning and Strategic Initiatives number 6 next, because there is a gentleman in the audience here not looking to speak, but just to be here for that item. Councillor Singh, do you want to move it? So you bring the report? Okay, Councillor Ioannidis. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, it's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Davey that we move item number 6, that the zoning bylaw amendment for Danbury Homes be approved.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. We will now go into reports of committees. Mr. Chapman, are you looking to speak?
Just before Ms. Palmer leaves the chamber, I think the answer to the question from Councillor Janicki about the loader tender is that the price that's shown in the bid price column is the base price plus HST. It doesn't include the options. And so what we've shown there is the base bid for the proponents, and then in awarding it to the low bid, we've also elected to purchase the 2 options that are listed in the recommendation. So if you take the $205,944 and add 13% HST, that arrives at the bid price in that column.
Okay. Clear. Great. Okay, thank you. So we'll now go into Finance and Corporate Services, and Councillor Davey.
Thank you. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dave Schneider that the 5 items of Finance and Corporate Services Committee be adopted, and I understand there will be some amendments coming.
Yes, Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. Yes, actually, I have 2 proposed amendments to to this item. So I'll start with the first one, which is an amendment to number 4. Thank you. So the amendment here is, I'll just wait for it to go up. That a business plan project to develop a municipal response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action be added to the 2018 business plan. Many of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action specifically mention municipalities, and so I feel that in order to start the conversation here in Kitchener in a more coordinated and intentional way, that it's important that we do our part to contribute towards the healing of the Indigenous members of our community and beyond.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Councillor Fernandez on this issue? Okay, go ahead.
So as late as last week, I had a meeting with some of our community legal service staff, with our partner, the region. And in that meeting, I was asked, along with Lori Palabeski, who attended as well, to support the I Am Committed and I Am Aware and I'm program and campaign. So when I saw this proposal, and I had a number of questions for Ms. McDonald, and I don't. Did you send the response, Ms.? I see that she's in the gallery. I wanted to ask her if she had sent the responses to all of council.
Through the mayor, no, I did send a response to you just before this meeting started, but I can outline my response to council now if that's helpful. I believe that let me just pull up my notes. So you had asked how long the discussions have been going on. So context for this, the recommendation to move this work forward is in part based on the work that was conducted in 2016 for the Community Engagement Review. And at that time, staff brought forward a recommendation to prepare a special outreach strategy to work with a variety of groups in the community, including Indigenous persons, people with disabilities, the LGBTQ+ community. So that activity is ongoing, and we'll continue that work. There are other conversations that are going on in the corporation because there is Indigenous engagement going on a variety of corporate projects. So staff are actually required, in accordance with a policy statement from 2014, a provincial policy statement, to engage with Indigenous peoples on certain planning activities. With respect to your comments about the community legal services and the campaign that you brought forward, I don't know the details about what's involved in that particular campaign. In doing a review of the calls to action to bring this work forward, it was identified that there are several calls to action specifically addressed to municipalities, as well as calls to action that are addressed to all levels of government. So we feel it's important to take really a comprehensive look at all of those calls to action and ensure that our response is complete and appropriate. You did ask about whether or not we'd engaged with Luann Lentz, who is, I believe, associated with the University of Waterloo Aboriginal Education Centre.
She's the coordinator for the Indigenous, sorry, I have it written down here. The Indigenous Justice Coordinator, who's working very closely with our Indigenous communities right now already.
Thank you for clarifying. So the intention would be to take a look at the work that is going on in the community, look at the work that is already going on in the corporation, and prepare a scoping document to bring forward to Council in the first quarter of 2018. And this would allow us to identify what functions are already being fulfilled and where there are gaps that do need to be addressed so that we can ensure that we're not duplicating any efforts.
Thank you. And I want to comment on this because I feel that even though it was part of our community engagement, there was a broad brush of groups that were identified at that time about community engagement. And yes, of course, in our planning policy, we do need to communicate and to include our Indigenous people within any planning that happens. That's something that I think many of us understand. What my concern is that we have a partner who is already doing some good work and are taking the initial steps. And what I would prefer to see is that we defer putting this into the business plan until we've had that initial conversation with Shannon and Jordo, who I met with, as well as Ms. Lentz, who is the Indigenous Justice Coordinator. She's been working with groups both at the university, at the colleges, and within our community. And they may already be a certain number of steps ahead of where we would maybe start as our starting point. And until we have that conversation and we know what they're doing, then we may be able to partner in a much better and more efficient and effective manner for our community, our Indigenous community. There have been a lot of challenges around the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I think that before we jump in or we dive in with this, we have to take it appropriate and respectful steps as we proceed. And there are, Ms. Luann Lentz really made it very clear on how we need to proceed in conversations with our Indigenous people, because there are times when just certain ways of speaking and certain presentations can be very offensive and very hurtful. So I certainly support what we're doing here, but I just really would like us to have that conversation first, and I'd be more than happy to be a part of that, because I was prepared to go ahead with the posters because, you know, I'm an action kind of person, and I think it would have been great to have had these posters that talk about being committed and being aware and being affected, how people in our community are affected by what's happened to our Indigenous people. So I support the amendment in the fact that I think it's the right direction, but I would like to ask for a deferral until January, until we've had some of those initial conversations with people who are already doing some of the really good work in our community.
Okay, I'll come back to you.
I'll respond to any questions if anybody has any.
Yeah. I'll come back to you on that. I think several members of council have had various conversations with members of the Indigenous community, and so which is I think a good thing. I'm not sure that necessarily precludes moving forward with this motion and any potential collaboration. But there's several other speakers. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I wasn't considering what Councillor Fernandez has brought up. I just had a question of Ms. McDonald, and I wrote to her on the weekend, and she did respond to me. I was just, if I could go over it, because here again we have already sort of approved a plan, and now we're going to add more to it, and I wanted to know if we add to it, what do we throw out, or what happens? So I asked who would do this, and what kind of time, what kind of person hours are we looking at to carry this out? I wonder if you could answer that again for me.
Certainly. I apologize if you didn't receive the follow-up message to council. I believe the estimate was approximately 15 hours to pull together a scoping document in the first quarter of 2018, and another 60 hours that could be committed without requiring a shift in priorities for the balance of the work. But the overall commitment to the project could extend to beyond 2018, but that will really depend on the direction of council, if I were to return in the first quarter with a scoping report, based on your direction on how far we'd like to take this.
Okay, and you gave me a rough idea, and you would be doing this, and it's something that you're saying that fits in without throwing anything else out.
Correct.
Yeah. So I can support this amendment, and when we come to it, I would like to deal with it separately, as opposed to the whole recommendation that's coming forward, because I can support this. Now, if it's a deferral, I could support a deferral also.
Finished? Councillor March? I'm trying to do it.
Thank you. I just want to respond to some of the comments made, just to say that I think it's really important that we recognize that this is really just an initial step. It's very, very beginning stage. And we have already heard from staff that efforts are already taking place to engage or partner or consult with local Indigenous groups. And we can't rely on a representative of another group to provide the free advice that's so often asked of members of a marginalized community to represent their whole group just because they happen to be a member of a community and happen to be there in a room. We need to take responsibility and do our part to make a coordinated effort. I myself have been in many conversations with various members of our community that are from various First Nations, and I think it's very valuable for corporate-wide for us to make sure that we're having a coordinated effort rather than piecemeal. So that's all this is. This is not something that I think would at all duplicate any efforts. It would only just be an initial step for the City of Kitchener to do what we need to do. And of course, we'll have many conversations with the experts to begin, but it's not duplication.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Councillor Marsh is saying. For me, and what I'm hearing from Jeanette is that we're not reinventing the wheel, but we need somebody in the corporation to take the lead on this, because there is a municipal response and a call to action. And so we need that lead person to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do from the call to action. That doesn't mean we can't utilize outside groups or outside experts from the municipality to assist us. Maybe they're covering off a lot of those things, but that would then be our staff's role to say this is being done in our community, we don't need to do it. And so I think it's an important piece that we need to look at. So for me, I think we need to move forward with it now so that we can get moving forward. I think it's a piece we've been missing for a long time, and I think at this point I know that we'll engage with the members of our community that have been working on these types of things already. So I'm confident that staff will be able to do this and be able to make sure we're covering off for municipality what we are supposed to do with the calls to action.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with that. The last points, regardless of what work may be happening already in call to action, reconciliation, I think optically we have to do this. We have to show that the municipality, the corporation cares of this important work that's taking place, great conversation, necessary conversation that's taking place, and we have to be doing our part as well. And very much so, we have to look internally as what's happening outside in the community with the various groups and other agencies, and we can easily, collaborate out to what the right action points need to come out of this. So I think this is an important step for us to do, and it should be included into our 2018 business plan.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I agree completely with what Councillor Singer said, or others around the table have said. We've waited far, far too long to get moving on this. I don't want to see it delayed anymore, so I'm certainly ready to support it now.
Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I just want a point of clarification. Councillor Marsh said that we were working with a legal aid community group. We're actually working with the Indigenous Justice Coordinator. So somebody who's been working with the Indigenous community both in Hamilton and with the community here. So they've already got boots on the ground. They're already dealing with the whole Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So this is not, some loosely pulled together initiative. There's some very clear direction on this, and that's why I think before we start diving in too deep, let's find out what is happening already. That's all I'm saying. And then once we understand that all that's going to take is one conversation, one meeting for a couple of hours. And then we can start putting together a really good and solid plan that fits with our business plan.
Councillor Marsh.
Councillor Fernandez mentioned my name, and I want to make sure that it's very clear. I am not suggesting that any of the people that you're referring to are anything less than experts. But what I know for sure is that they are not mandated within the corporation of the City of Kitchener to figure out how we need to respond to the calls to action. That is not their job.
And that's what I was working on.
But that is our job.
You had the floor.
That is our job, and that is why this amendment is meant to direct our staff to have that conversation as well as others to pull together our response, period. I want to make sure that nobody is thinking that I am trying to diminish anybody else.
Any other comments? Not, I'll make mine, and then I'll deal with the deferral motion if there's a seconder for it, and then I'll deal with the original amendment. In speaking to this, I think it's fair to say that there have been, I think, various conversations going on throughout the organization in terms of how we engage with our Indigenous communities, both in the areas that we are obligated to, such as the planning area, as well as others, including our response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I think we all need to recognize that this is something that has had a profound impact on many. In fact, the numbers of Indigenous Canadians is around 1.2 million across the country, and we have many urban Indigenous living in our own community. And taking on the recommendations of the Commission is something that has clearly become a national undertaking and a priority amongst all four orders of government, I will say, beginning with our Indigenous people and then our federal, provincial, and territorial, as well as municipal governments. And this is an issue that has had a lot of dialogue amongst our members, particularly in those urban environments that have large numbers of Indigenous community members. And in particular, I look at Vancouver and Winnipeg, where both mayors, in fact, were involved in the preparation of a document called Pathways to Reconciliation, which was published by FCM at the tail end of last year. And really, the document looks for us to start having some honest, frank, and sometimes what will undoubtedly, sorry, I'm having difficult conversations in the process. but that we need to have these conversations, and they need to be built on principles of empathy, respect, and an honest understanding of what our history has been. And it has been, as a nation, far from glamorous in terms of how we have handled that relationship with our Indigenous communities. And so I'm pleased that Councillor Marsh has moved this, because I think it does need to be formally added onto the business plan, not just for optics, but because ethically we have a responsibility, I believe, to deal with this. And I think we need to put it on the business plan, because these conversations are happening already, and so even within the day-to-day work of the corporation. So it's important that, one, as an organization, we recognize that, and this is the formal process to do that. But I think what it also does, particularly because we're working in a two-tier structure that involves our relationships with the other 6 lower-tier municipalities and the regional government, it signifies that this is a priority of this council, and it gives our staff a mandate to have dialogue with those other partners, as well as our Indigenous community members, that this is a priority, and to move it forward. And so I will be supporting adding this. I don't believe it's a new body of work. What it's doing is consolidating many pieces that are already happening. And yes, that may lead to some new things that we have to tackle. Inevitably, it will. If it didn't, then quite frankly, there's something wrong. And we'll deal with that at that point in time, when that business plan comes, or when that response and the relevant business plan that goes with that comes forward. So I won't be supporting the deferral. So I will go to the deferral next. Councillor Fernandez, you moved it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Netsky, you're seconding the deferral. And your timing, Councillor Fernandez?
Just until the next council or committee meeting in January.
Okay.
I didn't want to delay it any further than that.
Okay.
I do have a question of staff, actually. If I
Okay.
can do that after the vote.
Okay, well, you might as well ask it now so that we can have all the information on the table. Go ahead.
Well, Ms. McDonald, I just wanted to know what will happen to the I'm Affected, I'm Committed campaign that was brought to myself and Ms. Palabeski last week, that we wanted to move forward with next steps on that. Will that now be shelved until we start going through all of the other processes?
My understanding is that the engagement that's currently underway, or work that staff are otherwise involved in, could absolutely continue and potentially serve as an opportunity to better inform this project. As mentioned earlier, we do have corporate work underway already and in the past that we can draw upon. So this is really about consolidating what we learned, what we know, identifying, as you've said, work that's already going on in the community, so that we have a collective understanding of what's in place, what assets we can leverage. So I'm not familiar with Ms. Palabeski's work on this project, but there are no red flags that go up for me in terms of needing to stop or prevent any work from moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the deferral to the first council meeting in January has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? The deferral does not carry. On this amendment, all those in favor? Recorded vote. On the amendment, yes. Mr. May, you want to add something?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I think I just want to clarify the last question and answer. I do believe that it would be the wrong course of action to start to commit to specific one-off initiatives between now and when the report comes back in the first quarter of next year that will scope this out. So if we start an internal campaign when we haven't decided exactly what that is and we don't have this full comprehensive project, I think we won't consolidate all of the work. We'll just continue to spin our wheels and do random things. So I wanted to clarify that because I think my direction to Ms. Paliobeski will be to raise those issues when she's working with Ms. McDonald on the project that's just been added to the business plan.
Okay. Is there any follow-up question to that? Councillor Marsh?
Sorry, yeah, just on that point, Mr. May, are you already familiar with this campaign that's being referred to? And if once you become more familiar with it, would it still be a possibility that we could put up some posters? And I mean, it doesn't sound like it's something that we would have to
Through you, Mr.
put
Chair.
too much thought in.
I'm not personally aware of the campaign. I know that Ms. Paliobeski did meet with Councillor Fernandez last week, so I don't have the details. I think my point is that until we know where our priorities are, I can't tell you that this is the campaign that should be the priority of the organization. And so if I think the intention of your motion was to pull a bunch of work that was already being done together and prioritize that work for maximum benefit, I think we need to be very careful of continuing to do one-off projects until that report comes forward and scopes the work out for you.
Okay, I hear your caution. However, the intent of this motion is to move forward on ensuring that the City of Kitchener has a fulsome response to the calls for action and not to halt any existing engagement that's already happening until... I wasn't intending whatsoever to freeze any activity at this point. So without having any understanding of this poster campaign that's been referred to, I would just be cautious about saying let's not do anything.
Okay, I think staff can take that under an advisement. Staff can have a follow-up conversation with Ms. Paliobeski and determine, is this a new direction of work? Is it simply as simple as putting posters up? And advise us accordingly afterwards. But this motion has carried unanimously, which I think is great, and we can move forward. On another item in the list from Finance, Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, and it's I'm hoping that you will deal with the rest of 4 separately.
Deal with which one? The rest of 4?
The rest of 4.
Okay.
But the other question, you don't have to deal with it separately, but it deals with the REAP grant request. When they were here last week, I asked if we could get a copy of their actual expenditures to date and also a copy of their 2018 budget, as we request of all organizations looking for grants. I didn't see that mentioned in the minutes, so I just would like to have staff follow up on that. You don't have to deal with it separately. It's just
Okay, Ms. McDonald has taken note of that, and she'll make sure the information gets to us. I will deal with number 4 separately. Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, I have another amendment for number 5. Okay. Are we ready for that now?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So number 5 is to approve the new comprehensive business licensing bylaw. And my amendment is just that staff be directed to review information about payday loan licenses in other municipalities, as well as the Ontario Payday Loans Act, in order to provide council with a recommendation for the business license fee for payday lenders before April 1st, 2018. I had the opportunity to meet with the manager of business licensing this week, and I was assured, I have her assurances that this can be done within her existing work plan, and that it's something that, considering we have a Payday Loans Act at the provincial level that is currently being amended, it would be a missed opportunity for us to not await the final word from the province and make sure that our business license fee is in line with the Payday Loans Act.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Scott, thank you. Councillor Davey, thank you. Councillor Marsh?
No, sorry, I was clicking out.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Any further questions or discussion on this issue? Okay, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that there may have been a misunderstanding between Ms. Phylactu and you, Councillor Marsh. In chatting with Ms. Phylactu, we actually do not have the ability to add anything more to the licensing or the legislated services work plan for 2018. Ms. Phylactu is an integral part of our election steering committee. That work, along with everything that she's going to be doing in conjunction with implementing the new comprehensive business licensing bylaw, as well as getting the online business licensing up and running, and some other work that she has planned for the lottery licensing, which is in dire need of an overhaul, is going to keep her extremely busy. At this moment in time, the information that Ms. Phylactu provided is that Hamilton, as far as we're aware, is the only one who's doing anything with respect to payday loan establishments. This particular type of business is heavily regulated by the province, and there isn't anything more that we can do with respect to this particular type of business at the municipal level. We're certainly in your hands with respect to any kind of fee, but I will point out that in our bylaw, one of the guiding principles was fair and equitable fees that were based on cost recovery, and the fees that we are currently charging or proposing to charge for this particular type of business is in line with that particular guiding principle. So I just wanted Council to have that information, and my apologies, Councillor Marsh, if there was some sort of misunderstanding.
There was clearly a misunderstanding because I spoke with her this afternoon about this topic. So I will change my amendment, just that a decision regarding the business license fee for payday lenders be deferred until a future date before April 1st, 2018, at which point I will bring forward a recommended motion after I do the research. I would like to have the opportunity to take some time and to talk with folks from other municipalities that have been looking at this issue and bring forward a motion at a later date, but previous to the date on which the new schedule of fees will be implemented. Okay? Do you need it written out? Whatever.
So while you're writing that out, just one question of the clerk. Will that impact this year's license fees or not until 2019? Like, because you go out for licenses now, does that, or are we using we're using the new fee schedule even though the budget's not approved, or like what are we using going forward on this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're going to be using the fees that were attached to the report, but that will be effective April the 1st, I believe. Excuse me one moment while I just refer back to Ms. Phylactu's report.
Because the licenses normally expire, I think, December 31st.
That is correct, and so we were looking at a transition period, if you will. between January and April. So we're looking at implementing the new fees for 2019, but effective, so for renewals, it would be for January of 2019, but for new businesses coming in would be effective April 1st, 2018.
Okay, so in this case or any of the other ones, it would really only it wouldn't impact renewals, it would only impact potentially any new business that would come forward after council considered it at the subsequent date in Councillor Marsh's motion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's my understanding, but I can confirm with Ms. Vlactu tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess another route we could take is just to not make any amendment at this point, but for me to bring forward a motion and provide a notice of motion upon the date that I have the information I want to bring forward. Correct?
What is staff's preference in terms of handling that? Is it better to deal with it now as an amendment or to have it come back? I guess in the future, if it came back, it would require a motion to reconsider. So I think going ahead with your amendment may be a better approach.
Okay, here it is. This is not very neat.
Fine, well. So, Councillor David, you're still fine seconding that? So, Madam Clerk, that would mean in this instance, we would just use the existing fee then?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's my understanding. Again,
Okay.
I'll confirm that with Ms. Vlactu tomorrow.
Okay. So, is everyone clear on the motion? Councillor Singh on this item? Go ahead.
Yeah, that was my concern as to what fee would be applied in the meantime, so that's good that we get that information. The other is, how many payday loans do we have in the city?
At this point in time, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have 13 licensed, and we are in the middle right now of bringing into compliance 4 unlicensed establishments.
I see. So they would be new, and they would be applicable on any new fees?
I'm sorry, sorry, Councillor Singh.
So they would be applicable to pay any new fees if we were to change the fee structure, as opposed to waiting till 2019?
If we were to bring them into compliance now, they would pay the existing new fee, and then in April for the 2019 renewal cycle, they would pay whatever the renewal fee would be.
I don't expect you to recall, but do you know what the fee is currently?
I do not, but give me one moment. It may be in Ms. Vlactu's report.
Yeah, we do. We do, before April 1st. Oh. Yeah, that's fine.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to answer your question, Councillor Singh, they are licensed currently as permanent vendors. So the new fee in effective April 1st would be $125. Currently, the fee is, a new fee for a new vendor is $388.
So that's a new vendor, but what about existing vendor?
It would, right now, a permanent vendor, once it gets its license, is not required for a renewal or a late fee. It just continues to continue on year after year.
The one-time fee that they've already paid?
It's a one-time fee, correct, yes.
Okay, and I'm guessing Councillor Marsh should be looking at changing that aspect of it?
I need to do the research to confirm.
Okay, all right, good.
So just so we're clear, Councillor Marsh and everyone else, that would suggest that any existing ones right now would pay no fee. Correct, Madam Clerk?
Would pay no renewal fee.
No
Mr.
renewal
Mayor.
fee until 2019, at which point they would pay the new renewal fee. Any new ones coming forward would pay the... You're shaking your head.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, that's okay.
Any new any new payday loan companies coming on board between now would pay the $388, and it would be a permanent vendor fee. They would pay no renewal fee. Only new payday loan companies that came into business after April 1st, they would pay the $125 new fee. I hope I'm making myself clear.
Okay. Everyone clear? Okay, so we'll deal with this amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Sorry? Who didn't? Oh, sorry, Councillor Yanetsky, I thought your hand was up. So, but it's carried nonetheless. We will deal with the balance of the business licensing bylaw as amended. Those in favor? Sorry? We're dealing with number 5. Yep. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. I didn't deal with the balance of number 4, so we'll deal with that one. That's the strategic plan one. We just voted on the amendment. And Councillor Gazzola, you had asked for a recorded vote on that one, or did you just want to speak to it?
Yes. We're asking to approve the amended vote. When we dealt with this at committee last week, there were 3 amendments, which I didn't support any of them. I did support for the main motion, but I spent a fair amount of time on the weekend trying to get my head wrapped around where we're going on all of this. And we've gone from we've gone from where there was really limited planning to where the pendulum has swung all the other way, and we're doing a tremendous amount of planning. I was dealing with staff trying to figure out, how much time we are spending on all of this. And when we discussed it last week, I said I would like to see in the future some guesstimate of hours that are person hours that are involved to do these things. We have 120 items on the list. I speaking with our staff, and they had a figure of they spend 94% of their time looking after the day-to-day normal routine things, and 6% of the time on these special projects. And I asked if they could give me a guesstimate of what that 6% represented, and they came back with an estimate of that would be the equivalent of 71 FTEs, which I don't think is the right answer. But the point is that there is an awful lot of time being spent on this. I'm happy to go along with where we're at, but I'm not supportive of adding anything to it at this time, so I won't be supporting that recommendation before us.
Okay, thank you. Did you want a recorded vote? You do? Okay. Any further discussion? Councillor Galloway-Seeloff?
I can respect the fact that there's not all the projects or something that you're willing to support, and I can appreciate that. What I can appreciate that is this is the one true biggest document outside of the budget process that we are mandated to do. We give the business plan to give the corporation the work that they're supposed to do. We set what the core services are, and we set the business plan. And so from my perspective, it is one of the biggest decisions we make because it also informs our budget. And those are the 2 biggest decisions that we make every year. And so for me, if there's items that you don't support, I can fully appreciate that, including, the one amendment I made last week at committee. But for me to just hear you say that you don't support anything is difficult for me. And I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, I'll go to you next. I'll come back to you, Councillor Yanetsky. Go ahead, Councillor Gazzola.
No, I just, let's really look at this. When I start to investigate this, I find that there are 27 strategies. Those 27 strategies produce 120 strategic action plans, and then the strategic action plans produce I don't know how many business plans. Okay, and I'm prepared to stay where we were prior to trying to change things around, which we tried to do last week. But I think we need to take a good look at that whole process. There's an awful lot of time being involved, and I think it's worth.
Good. Okay, and that's fine. You're entitled to. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, I too last week did. I'm in support of the strategic plan, and I had no concerns about where we're going. It was presented by staff, but then all the additional amendments that were presented, I didn't support them either. So I will not be supporting this particular application only because those amendments were approved last week at the committee level. But I still endorse the plan as originally proposed.
Okay, Councillor Galloway-Seelock, you've had your turn. I'll gladly come back to you. Councillor Fernandez.
I'm just wondering if it might be easier if we were able to articulate what the three amendments were and pull those out separately and vote on them separately. I was looking for my minutes from the Finance and Corporate Services, but I don't have last week's. I have the budget one.
There hasn't been a request for that.
So I'll make that request then, if that would make it a lot easier. There were amendments made last week to the strategic action plan, and they were each voted on separately. And then the strategic action plan was voted on as amended, and that's what's here in the report.
And at the end of today, even if we deal with those three separately, we would then need to deal with it as amended and deal with the same recommendation that's in front of us. And I think what you're hearing some of our colleagues say is they're not prepared to support it as amended.
As amended. All right. I'm just wondering if it might be easier to pull those out. But okay.
Yep. Thanks for the suggestion. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I don't even know if it's worth my time to say, but there were people last week who voted against the business plan, and I think if there's things that you're specifically against, then speak out against them, and that wasn't done, and that's where I have difficulty, because I really take pride in making sure that either if it's an amendment that I bring forward, that I feel it's really important to the corporation to make sure that we look at that and address it. And if others feel differently, that's okay. But to just not support any strategic actions in the plan, and to say you support our strategic plan, those two comments don't align to me. And so I just feel it's important that when we move forward to just say, state your case. I don't support three, but I support the rest. But to just simply say you're going to vote against it because you don't agree with amendments, I don't know. It's the biggest, as governance of the corporation, it's one of the biggest things we do all year, including the budget.
Any other comments? I guess I will add that, as a council, I think we do have three main priorities. One is the hiring and evaluation of our CAO. The second one is setting the municipal budget, and the third one is actually setting the strategic direction of the organization. I would actually argue, if there was ever a discussion on it, that we actually have one of the most solid and comprehensive strategic plans that I'm familiar with in municipalities across Ontario and across Canada. And in fact, in the past, when I've done training through FCM in other communities, I've actually used their strategic planning process as a model in terms of what should be implemented in their communities, because it is comprehensive. It's all about citizen engagement and transparency and accountabilities. And that's why I think it is an important document, and I will be supporting it this evening. But obviously, that's up to each individual member of council to decide their position on that. So a recorded vote has been called for number 4, so we'll deal with that one next. All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. The balance of the report, is anybody looking for anything to be dealt with separately? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Community and Infrastructure Services, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Sarah Marsh that items 1 through 7 be approved.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
I'd like number 6 to be dealt with separately.
Okay. Go ahead on that one. Did you want to?
And I'll ask for a recorded vote on it, okay?
Okay, thank you.
I'll have a comment if you
Okay,
want.
then go ahead. We'll deal with it now.
I didn't support this at committee last week because I said I need to do more homework on it, and I did. I spent a lot of time on the weekend, during the week, rereading all the available information. And I want to personally thank Ms. Stewart from staff, who I wrote to and posed a number of questions to her, and she was very good to get back to me with a lot of answers. It really is an issue that I just think we need to look a closer look at. I'm hearing things about City Hall's crumbling and it's falling apart at the seams, and that's not the case. That's not the case. I asked staff last week when we were dealing with this as to what our risk timing on this is, and there was told 3 to 5 years. I read the detailed report and it said 5 to 10 years. So, and I want to make it totally clear, I have no problem spending the money tomorrow for repairs that are required for the safety and risk that could be involved. What I have a problem with is all of a sudden we are really approving a $9 million expenditure. It's not clear. I tried to ascertain how much of that is required for the repair, and then I was told that it was $4.5 million. I'm also told that they have to repair the Duke Street side of it too. So it's going to be, if that's the figure, it's going to be more than $4.5 million. I really don't see a great deal in change of the functionality of where we're going. And looking at the details of the cost, just for the design alone, we're looking at $1.2 million. I'm saying, what if we don't, for the amount of change that we're looking at the King Street Square, I just question those kinds of dollars. And I'm not, and I know the value of the square. People throw that up at me. I've seen enough good squares around the world to know the value of the square. I know what the value of it here. I was there last week for the Chris Kindle. The place was full and great and all that. And I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem with coming out now, we're dealing with $9.2 million, and that's without really doing a second look at the Duke Street portion of it. If we approve what's before us tonight, it automatically goes back to staff, and then next year we're going to have a new figure in the budget for $9.2 million. The budget is balanced as it is right now, so if we try to squeeze $9.2 million into a balanced budget capital forecast, something else has to go. So I'm just, my whole point here is that we're a little bit premature on this. I'd like to know what kind of options we have. What is the option just to repair? What is the cost to start to change things around? And it's not crumbling. It's not going to fall down around us. So we need to take the time to look at it. So I won't support it as it is here before us tonight.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little surprised by some of the comments, and I share often enough with Councillor Gazzola when it comes to aspect of fiscal responsibility. When it comes to ensuring that our taxpayers get the best for what they pay for. When it gets to ensure that we are not unnecessarily spending money. But in this situation, one, I think we need to get some clarity on the numbers. But beyond that, we are not technical staff. I don't think no one around the horseshoe here has an engineering degree, structural engineering degree. We've been told by our staff that it is in effect. Water is leaking through the membrane and affecting our garage, which would deteriorate the infrastructure that's there already. Anyone walking in the square right now can see multi-inch gaps where the edges are deteriorated, and it's obvious to see that it is a health and safety concern, and I'm surprised we haven't done something sooner. Every time I walk by it, I'm reminded that this is a looming liability waiting to happen. So there are aspects of repairs that are without question necessary and far sooner than later. Now, coming back to questions of staff, do you mind, Mayor Banovic, if I just get some clarification? Would that be okay?
Go ahead, Councillor Singh.
So just to separate the two, obviously there's proposed work on the Duke Street side. What portion is that? Like, how much is that?
Mr. Reardon.
Through the Mayor, if you recall back to last year, Report 16-066 highlighted a $4.5 million repair-only cost for Carl's Air Square and Duke Street combined. So I'd be removing the pavers, getting down to the parking membrane, replacing that membrane, and then replacing the pavers on top. So it'd be limited work. It would just be the bare bones necessary to do that work. So of that, $3.5 million would be for Carl's Air Square and $1 million for the Duke Street side, just to repair the membrane and the concrete above.
So the added work that we're doing, and it's 9.2 right now, that's a proposed expected cost?
Through the Mayor, the cost for Carl's Air Square and College Street is $5.74 million. And then the Duke Street and Yonge Street, which is estimated to be a later phase, would be $3.27 million for what was outlined in the master plan.
Okay. So when we look at just Carl's Air Square, we're talking about a $2 million difference between a just bare minimum structural repair of the concrete and the membrane and not doing any design change from the way the square looks right now. Because I want to separate the two from Duke Street and Carl's Square.
Through the Mayor, that is correct. It's about a $2 million premium to improve the functionality over what the base repair would be.
But no matter what, we are required, or necessary works are expected of in the tune of $3.5 million for Carl's Air Square.
Through the Mayor, that is correct. And the longer we wait with repairs to the membrane, the more quickly the repairs to the garage will escalate, because the more salt and water that gets into the concrete requires jackhammering and removal of the concrete with replacement. So the sooner we can replace the membrane minimizes the amount of concrete work we have to do in the parking garage.
Final question. At this point, if this council is supporting the current proposal, because we don't actually have the monies at hand, apart from doing the bare minimum, which is the 3.5, we can still come to terms with how much we want to spend with the additional design. Is that not correct?
Through the mayor.
Ultimately, this could change. We could come to terms a year or 2 years down the road once we know what available funding there is from other orders of government. And if there's more available, we can try to achieve the maximum effort of what is outlined by the design. And if it isn't, because at that point we will have to cost out and put it into our capital forecast, we could determine in changing the phase of that work at that point.
Through the mayor, so council last year directed staff to include improvements to the rink and the stage to improve the functionality of the square, and that was unanimous approval by the members that were present at the time. The reason why we came back to council this year is to get confirmation on the functional design, to move towards detailed design, to remove one of the edges on the area of the square that joins the fountain to the gathering place and the stage component. That would be difficult to change at detailed design, but if council were to revert back to just a base case replacement, that could be an option.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, because we don't actually have the monies at hand right now. We may have to come to reality at that point and may revert back, but that very much is available for future councils to determine at that point. Correct?
Through the mayor, that is correct.
I'll just quickly make one comment and within the 5 seconds I have left. I think at this point we're trying to achieve for the very best for our community. It's, I think, obviously clear that we have to have some very serious conversations of how to budget for this works. But without question, $3.5 million will have to be necessarily found to ensure that we don't have additional deterioration to our garage and the Carlsbad Square, and ensuring health and safety of anyone that walks on that surface right now. So I'm comfortable in supporting, in trying to get to that point of getting the right design for the best for our community, provided that there is funding out there from other orders of government. But again, then if I'm still around this horseshoe, that opinion on my part may change. But what won't change is we absolutely need to ensure commitment of that $3.5 million of work that needs to be done. So I'm at this point comfortable in supporting in that way.
Mr. Reedman, you want to add something?
Through the mayor, I just want to clarify. So with detailed design, we are just carrying one detailed design forward, and that is the functional design that council had approved last time, and we're seeking final approval today on. So I just want to make that clear that the detailed design is for the functional improvements that was in the report that was presented. So if council chose to revert back to the simplified design, we would have to go back and revise the detailed design to clarify that in a year's time.
Councillor Yanetsky.
I initially supported the improvements to the square, although I didn't really rationalize clearly the impact financially that would be on the taxpayer, and that the money was not quite available yet. And now when I've had an extra week to think about it and seeing the cost breakdown that was provided by Linda Stewart, I was able to analyze and sort of reflect better on the overall impact. I mean, I look at the square, and it was full of people over the weekend, and it was very, very active, and it is a very, very good site. Yet I was also at the same time trying to find where it's all falling apart. And yes, I did see little bits of concrete crumbling in different parts of the square. And I know part of the design is not perfect, that was originally put to what the objective is right now. But I think it's, to some degree, work has to be done, and I figure that money could be set aside in the budget to address some of those serious issues. But to go to the extent that we're going right now and pay these big bucks, I'm finding it very difficult to support. So although I see improvements, not improvements, but corrections or improvements to fix and maintain the parts are needed, but I think it could be done at a lower cost, and I would like to see staff come back with something more agreeable to me and the taxpayer.
Councillor Marsh.
I just want to remind my colleagues that we know that the parking garage is in jeopardy if we do not move toward repairing the damage in a timely fashion. Staff have recommended to us that it needs to be done by 2023, and so we are not in immediate danger, but just because a councillor cannot see the damage does not mean that the experts who have inspected it are wrong. It is required work. We know that it's not just a little bit of repairs to the concrete on the surface of the square.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot a couple of things that I wanted to mention. But the first thing is, to repair the membrane, we have to do the whole thing, from what I understand. You cannot just do the King Street side. You're going to have to do, I was told you have to do the King Street side, you have to do the Duke Street, you have to do the two side streets. If you're going to repair the garage, you have to do the whole thing. So we're looking at the full job. We can't really, if I'm not, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I was told. You have to fix the whole thing. The other question, I'm trying to get a feeling for this. I asked staff, over the last 5 years, what has it cost us for repairs to the garage? And I was given no figure other than I was told that last year we spent $13,200 on repairs, which involved pushing in some epoxy or something to some of the cracks. So we need to take a sober second look at this whole issue, I think, and that's all I'm trying to push for. I'm totally not opposed to fixing things up that need to be. I don't think they're nearly as bad a shape as we're led to believe, and we need to grasp with, if we're going to fix it up, and then we'll fix the bottom up, we've got to fix the top up. So we're dealing with a $9.2 million project, which will probably be more. We need a sober second look.
Mr. Reedman, you wanted to provide some clarification?
Yes, through the mayor. So when we looked at the garage structure, the Carl's Air Square side was in worse condition than the Duke Street side, which is why staff recommended phasing back in 2016 and continue to recommend phasing at this point in time. There's also more demands on the Carl's Air Square side with food trucks and different heavy equipment that goes on the square more often, so that's part of the rationale behind phasing the two sides.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. On that point, just again to staff, what amount are we dealing with as a result of the approval today? What amount of money total as a result of the decision we're making today?
Mr. Reedman.
Through the mayor, there's no commitment today in terms of funding. So we have $400,000 set aside for detailed design that we plan to move forward with and come back with the detailed design, more refined costing, as well as the funding strategy at that time.
Okay, and if, in terms of staff's budgeting, then are we talking about a $5.5 million decision or a $9.5 million decision today? And I understand what you just said. I'm just saying in terms of what we're looking at right now.
Through the mayor, the first phase would be $5.74 million.
Okay. Thank you. And again, I think we've heard this several times, even if we just did the base repair of that 5.7, 3.5 is maintenance. Would be regular work just to repair it.
Through the mayor, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, that was the very clarification I wanted aspect of what are we committing to funding and what's necessary. But for clarity, it's 4.5. 3.5 is for Carl's Air Square, and the 1 million is for Duke Street. But what we've gotten a better understanding from staff, Duke Street is not in the same condition as Carl's Air Square, so we could come to a different determination with that one. But again, going back to the the answer that we got from staff, we're not committing any dollars at this point.
Okay, if there aren't any other Councillor Davey?
Sorry, I didn't realize we were in comments. Just a quick comment, yes. So I'm obviously going to support this. Am I going to support the full plan when it comes before us? I don't know yet. I need to see what that plan looks like. And I had asked, hopefully, if there are any components that can be broken out in sort of an a la carte process when it comes back to us. I'd like to look at those individual components and how much they cost. But to say no to this means that we don't look at the problem. We need to get the information to come back. We looked at a conceptual design, and I think we collectively think that it's at least in the right direction, the way we want to go. So the big question is, how are we going to fund it? Well, that's how we're going to have to figure out. It could be, again, if we're hearing 2023, we could be looking at needing to find $1 million a year for 5 years. It's not like it's going to hit us all at once. And there's, again, the opportunity for grants has been mentioned by Councillor Singh and others going forward. So to say no to this, I think, really is to sort of ignore the problem at this point.
Councillor Gazzola, you've spoken over it a couple times. Is it something absolutely imperative?
Everything I say is absolutely imperative.
I'm aware of that. So,
yeah, look,
in the spirit of the season, I'm giving you some latitude.
All right. Just look, and I'm not saying no. I'm not saying no to necessary, but the recommendations that's before us says that the functional design for City Hall outdoor spaces, as outlined, be endorsed. And if you do that, you've agreed to change the thing around. You've gone further than agreeing to just repair. You really approved the whole thing. And once you approve the functionality, you're done. Maybe what I'm asking for is maybe we need to defer this and have a better look at it before we go forward.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola, you've had lots of time to make your point. I'm just asking you to respect the process. Okay. Councillor Gazzola, please. I'm trying to... Okay, well, no, I've given you time and now you keep talking. So, please, thank you. I will be supporting the recommendation that's before us. I think a lot of work has gone into this process, both in terms of public engagement and preliminary work by staff. And I think we can't lose sight of the fact between that earlier work and this work, the overall cost has actually gone down in estimates by $1 million because of the work by staff in looking at the overall project that would be required over several phases. I think a lot of good points have been made by members of council around the importance of this facility. I don't think anybody is suggesting that the parking garage is going to, come crashing down tomorrow. I think what people are saying is that we have an asset, and just like when you have a home and you need to replace your roof, or you need to replace your eavesdrops and fascia, or replace other things, we need to do certain work on this garage over the next little while. We are now going into a phase where we're going to get better cost estimates, more detailed design, and then it'll be up to the council of the day to deal with this and deal with how they're going to incorporate it into the budget, and for staff to make recommendations in that regard. There may be other dollars that are available from the other orders of government that can go towards this asset, but we have a responsibility to the citizens of our community to look after this asset just like we look after our other buildings, just like we look after our sewer and water pipes, just like we look after the roads. It is a facility that's incredibly well used. It's one that is 25 years old, where the infrastructure of the ice rink and so on, in terms of the mechanical, is reaching its lifespan, where and one needs to just go down onto the first floor of the garage and you can see some of the areas where actually water has come through and where there is rust and so on. And so sure, can we leave it for another decade? We probably can, but it's only going to cost exponentially more to deal with the repairs at that point in time, as opposed to dealing with it proactively in a timely manner. And so I think taking this next step is the prudent course of action. And I believe staff have given council all of the information that they need in order to do that. And now it's up to council to make their decision. Councillor Gazzola, I see you've clicked in again. I've given you 3 times to talk. I'm not going to be going another time. Okay, Councillor Gazzola. Okay, what's your point of order, Councillor Gazzola?
I want to correct a point
Okay, please,
that you made.
please go ahead.
You said, and rightfully so, that from the previous estimates, the cost has gone down $1 million, which is correct. It's gone down in the front, $821, and on the Duke Street side, $189. That's close to $1 million. But on the bottom of the page, there are 2 sections that have gone up $251,000 and $266. So although part of it's come down $1 million, another part of it has gone up $500,000. So that's...
Thank you for providing that added clarification. Any further discussion? If not, a recorded vote has been requested on this item. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we will now go to the balance of the report. Councillor Ian, you're for the next item. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Ioannidis, Planning and Strategic Initiatives.
Yeah, it's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Davey that the report of the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee be adopted from items from 1 through 5 and item 6 already being dealt with.
And we'll be dealing with item number 3 separately because Councillor Singh has a conflict, so I'll deal with that one first. Any discussion on that? All those, okay, Councillor Etherington?
Just one point, Mr. Mayor. I was asked today just to bring up for the information of council that MTD had some concerns with this Rockway plan. They met with planners today and they just wanted me to deliver the news that they seem to have resolved the issues they had with this parts plan as it relates to their what is a 17-acre site. And the only thing they request is for better future communication as the plan moves ahead if there are changes or when there are changes to the plan. So I said I'd bring that up. I had one other question on the Mill Street part of the same Rockway parts plan. It says here that I guess the same thing happened there, where the developer met with planners. I was just curious what changes were made there, if someone could tell me that.
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not at all aware of what Councillor Etherington is referring to, but I'd be happy to follow up by email.
Okay. So number 3, we'll deal with that. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? That motion is carried. Deal with the rest of the planning report. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, just very quickly on the number 2 for tall building skyline. I think this is a very important step for our community to outline exactly the expectation of how our city will grow and grow up. I can give examples in the ward I represent, Ward 6, where there is a few towers that are proposed that will be exceeding that 8-story height limit. And this is good, comforting news to those citizens near those locations, knowing that there'll be a better expectation of good design and something that conforms and fits better into a neighborhood. So glad that this is the direction that we're taking.
Thank you. Any further comments? So dealing with number 3 only. Dealing with the balance of the report only. Sorry? Yeah. Those in favor? Sorry? Sure. Sure. Happy to do that. Number 2 then, we'll deal with a recorded vote. That's carried unanimously. Balance of the report, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously as well. And we've dealt with Heritage Kitchener already, so we'll move on to unfinished business. New business? Councillor Gazzola.
I'm not sure if it's on. First, I want to apologize to you. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I didn't realize I was being disrespectful, so I publicly apologize to you. Now, getting on to, I'm not sure if it's new business or old business or what, but it relates to a email that I circulated dealing from a constituent in Ward 3 dealing with Phase 2 of the LRT project. A good start of that Phase 2 project takes place in Ward 3, and a lot of people in that lower end of the ward near the 401 are affected by it, and they have a lot of ideas, a lot of good ideas, a lot of ideas, and they feel that they're not getting the ear of regional council on it. As a matter of fact, they've had 2 public engagement meetings, one in Cambridge, Galt, and one in Preston, but there's none have been slated for down in the Sports World area where there's a major stop, and they asked me to bring forward to you as you sit on regional council to see what needs to take place for them to have a meeting and to have an opportunity to discuss their ideas with people from the regional staff. So I leave that with you.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. And just in that regard, I think you're aware I did meet with that group and am working to set up a meeting with staff so that they can share their viewpoints. In addition to that, though, there's a official process that all citizens, including that resident group, are encouraged to provide their input. Staff will be evaluating all of the various options and ultimately come back to the broader community with recommendations around possible routing. I think as this council may be aware, there is a fair bit of concern around residents in a part of Preston around what has traditionally been shown or originally shown as the preferred route for the for Phase 2 of the LRT, and I think it's fair to say that those residents have and continue to be heard by regional council at numerous sessions, and again, the most important thing right now is to formally feed the information into the official process, which that resident group has, and in the meantime, staff will be working on it, and at some point in the future, bringing a recommendation forward to regional council. Any other new business? Questions and answers? I have one, just very quickly. Today, and I don't expect an answer, but Been getting some emails about the Conway ice rink that I guess historically has been on the Hydro One lands, and apparently the community has found out that it won't be permitted any longer because Hydro One has asked us to get off those lands. So I'm wondering if staff can circulate some information about that, and I guess, is it a done deal, or is there opportunities for us to engage Hydro One in trying to come up with a resolution would be, I guess, phase 2 of my question. So I think are the ice rinks under yourself, Mr. Mayor, or under Ms. Fletcher? Or a little bit of both?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll look into it and circulate a response to council.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we will move on to first reading of the bylaws, and it's been moved by Councillor Etherington, seconded by Councillor Schneider, that leave be given the mover and seconder to introduce the bylaws listed on the agenda, and that the same be taken as read a first time and stand referred to the Committee of the Whole. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Sorry? Oh, 4 additional ones? Sorry, we didn't really vote on that. Madam Clerk, can you share those 4 additional ones, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. 4 late starter bylaws are emanating from standing committees reports. 1 zone change amendment concerning 588 to 600 Queen Street South. 1 regarding a zone change amendment to 731 Huron Road. 1 concerning the emergency plan bylaw, and 1 concerning the business licensing bylaw.
Thank you. So we'll just take that vote on the first reading again. All those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis that Council resolve itself into Committee of the Whole. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Ioannidis.
Okay. We move the bylaws. Do we have any questions? All those in favor? Okay.
I move number 2.
Number 2. Do we have any questions with item number 2? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 3 has been dealt with. Item number 4, do we have a mover? Councillor Schneider, do we have questions?
Councillor Marsh.
Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, I was really impressed with the DISC program, and I'm just wondering if there's any move towards repeating it. Have we applied to do it again? Is there a funding opportunity to repeat that program?
Mr. Bloom?
Through the chair, while it was a successful program, the province has unfortunately not continued it for next year. Doesn't mean they may not, they won't revisit it in future years, but they haven't committed any funding next year, unfortunately. But while we had it, it was an amazingly successful program.
Yeah, I just want to commend all the staff and all the individuals who participated in the program, the businesses, the students. It was highly recommended by all that became involved for businesses to try to get involved again. So it's a shame that it's not being repeated immediately, but let's hope for the future. Thank you.
Do we have further questions on this item? No? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Move item 5.
Councillor Singh, move item number 5.
You have several people in the queue. Councillors Gazzola, Fernandez, and Marsh.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I have a number of questions of staff on it. I'm trying to see how this works, and some things aren't clear. I'll start off by questioning why we're involved with it and why the GRE organization doesn't look after it all.
Mr. Reedman. Who? Mr. Reedman.
Mr. Reedman?
Oh, sorry, I clicked it.
Can I ask?
No, hang on. I got too many people on. Just give me 1 sec. Go ahead, Mr. Reedman.
Through the chair, so this is being viewed as a partnership between the municipality, GRE, and then applying for the grant. So we're looking to align the process similar to what City of Waterloo is doing. So their council passed this today. And we're hopeful the City of Cambridge will as well. So we're looking at a region-wide application where we're following the same parameters around the partnerships.
But according to your figures, the cost is being split between Kitchener and the GRE. I didn't see a split going to Waterloo and to Cambridge, other than through their own electrical organization. But so is our electrical organization involved. So I don't see where Waterloo and Cambridge are in your figures. You have here a total cost of, for example, a construction of $65,000, and we're being asked, Kitchener's being asked to pick up $32,500. Now, if that's $32,500 between us and Waterloo and Cambridge, that's a different story.
Through the mayor, so the grant application is for up to 10 chargers per municipality. So we're looking at it as a region-wide application. So we're applying for 3. The City of Waterloo is applying for 3, and I believe the City of Cambridge is also applying for 3. So each has their own financial breakdown within their report. So the financial breakdown in this report is only related to the information for the City of Kitchener.
Okay, then I better understand that. That wasn't clear, and I couldn't understand. Does this mean we're going to lose 3 parking spots in our parking garage?
Through the mayor, so these are on-street or curbside parking spaces in urbanized areas that the pilot is specifically focusing on. So one charger accommodates 2 parking spots. So 6 parking spots would be electric vehicle charging spots. They would not be lost. They would just provide electric charging for electric vehicles.
Okay. We're going to spend a number of dollars on this project. What do we stand to gain as a municipality?
Through the chair, we stand to gain a pilot. So one of the first municipalities in Canada to have curbside charging stations available for our citizens and people that do business in downtown. So that's an added benefit. We know charging stations do provide benefits for commercial properties. We have minimal risk for this because GRE would be the owner and maintainer of the charging stations for the pilot. We would get a share of revenue as well from this.
But we're going to pay $32,500 up front, and then we're going to have to pay for half of the operating costs. So what do we get for that, other than to say look at us, we're first? Or this is apparently it's quite common in Quebec already. Well, can I ask you another question on page 5-4? When you're calculating the cost, is that the right calculation that you've done there?
Through the chair, I'm not following.
You're showing cost of electricity at 70 cents an hour, but you really have to multiply that by 6 stations, right? If you have 6 stations, isn't it 6 times the amount of electricity that's required? The revenue side of it shows 6 times the revenue. So the cost also needs to show 6 times the hydro cost. Am I wrong? Or?
Through the chair, so I'd have to go back and double check that, but I could email. I can't do the calculation in my head right now while we're talking about this.
It makes quite a difference because it all of a sudden turns a profit into a loss. Do we have to make this decision tonight?
Through the chair, so to be eligible for this grant, we need to submit our commitment by the end of this year. So
by the end of what?
This year. So yes, a decision has to be made whether we would like to move forward today.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, you have Councillor Fernandez, Marsh, and then Singh.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, when I was looking through the report and I was looking at the rate that's going to be charged, it says between $1 and $2. Who's going to set that rate?
Through the chair, we would in dialogue with GRE.
Because that's quite a rate fluctuation. I mean, are there other operators of charging units that could be charging a different rate? And are we going to be seeing, electric vehicles queuing up to try and get the best rate, similar to what we see at gas stations?
Through the chair, so some businesses provide free charging. So if you look at Starbucks as an example, they put that in their business model. So this is a publicly provided amenity. So we are looking at cost recovery as part of that. We charge a rate in our existing charging stations in our parking garages along with a parking fee to utilize the space. Our rate is around the same range as what's being proposed here. The flexibility is meant to give some flexibility over time. This is a 5-year pilot, so we're looking at that range over the 5-year pilot.
Okay, so you said that some businesses are offering free charging stations. And we're offering charging stations within our parking garage like we have at Charles and Benton, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah, so people are parking there and then charging their vehicles at a rate between $1 and $2 per hour?
Through the chair, that is correct.
That can add up quite a bit, can it not?
Through the chair, that was the proposal we brought forward to council, and council approved that a couple of years ago. There is a cost to electricity, so we are running it as a service that we're providing. People do pay for their gasoline when they drive to our parking garage, so we are charging for electricity for people to park there.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not being perceived as gouging the citizens if there's free charging stations and then we're charging a maximum. And yes, of course, we want to make some revenue on this, but what amount of revenue is reasonable and what is a deterrent in terms of getting people to use electric vehicles?
Okay, do we have any other?
Councillor Marsh and then Singh.
Councillor Marsh.
So I, as a proud owner of an electric vehicle, I support this proposal, and I just want to clarify that the $1.50 an hour does not mean it would mean more kilowatt hours than just than just 1 kilowatt hour. So the breakdown is something that it is more efficient, more cost efficient than purchasing gas by quite a lot. And it's really important that we have these charging stations available at street level, not only for our residents who own an electric vehicle and perhaps need to just plug in for a little while they're going about their day, but also for visitors from other communities that come into Kitchener and need to charge in order to continue on their way. And we can be a welcoming community for people who have their electric vehicles. We really don't have enough chargers available within the region to support the anticipated growth that we will be seeing in electric vehicle usage over the coming years. So this is a very timely project.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the way I see this is the necessity to move with the time. And also from some of the points raised on 5-4, if you take a look where it says global management service fee, it says $0 times 2 because there is no fee. Then again, warranty fee because there is no warranty fee, it says 0 times 6. 0 times 6 for the both, my apologies. Simply, I'm pretty sure that the fees and the cost related are based on the 6 stations. And then simply on 5-5, the chart shows what are we getting back? That was a question asked. What are we getting back apart from just the necessary, obvious of the community benefit of our meeting our, as a corporation, our obligation to be environmentally sensitive. Apart from that, this hopefully will become a cost-neutral endeavor over time. It may not look so on paper immediately, but over time it will. I'm sure when estimates were looked at or costs were looked at for our solar roof on the Cough, probably similar scenario and similar concerns were raised, our taxpayer payers reaped a benefit of some $300,000 back to the tax base a few years back when we were dealing with a very difficult budget. This could end up being, as a utility, very much the same. I have a couple questions from staff. First of all, I asked this regarding REAP, so I'll ask this for this as well. Under a cap and trade program, this is a cost that's coming to our utility ratepayer. And we were told, again, details are not firm yet, but we could offset some costs related to local initiatives that are done by the municipality. Is this not an example of that? And so could we have that benefit as well of reducing our cap and trade obligation?
Through the chair, so what I can speak to is if we were to go alone, this would be a $100,000 project. So through the partnership, we are getting grant money back. I don't have details whether this would offset our cap and trade, but I do know that in the Waterloo region, transportation is growing source of emissions. So it grew 5% between 2010 and 2015. So investments in electric chargers do help offset that.
Thank you. And I think it's very clear that these things are very obvious, and I would hope that our staff going forward, whenever there is an endeavor or project that's related to sensitivity to our environment, where we are, as a municipality, doing more than is required of us, that we can take a look and seeing what those offsetting costs could be when we're dealing with the cap and trade program. So, because this is a question I'm sure all of us will continue to ask, because that's a looming cost to the corporation and our ratepayers as well. So going back, answered some of the questions that was raised, there are very obvious benefits to the environment, to hopefully offsetting potential costs to cap and trade that we have to incur locally, and more importantly, something that's going to become over time cost neutral, as the report shows. And obviously, it hurts at the beginning because there's a starting cost. But this is something that we can't afford not to do.
Any other further? Okay, I'll make my comments. I think this is a great initiative for us to be involved in. It will definitely enhance our electric vehicle charging units from a garage, but also to a street presence, which I think is important. And when it's just to stress upon, this is a pilot, and we're looking at the NRCan is one that's providing a 25% subsidy for these. So I think we're getting a pretty good deal to try something that I think will benefit the community, not only with quality of life, but also providing a better environmental alternative. So all those in favor? All those in favor, please stand up. Opposed? Okay, that's carried. And that the proceedings and the recording, it's been moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Davey, that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Gazzola, you had... No, you're clicked in, so that's fine. Councillor Galloway-Silock. Go ahead.
Yeah, I should have brought this up earlier, just with regards to more of an announcement and for council to be aware. I was able to go to the announcement where the City of Kitchener is going to receive $865,000 for the cycling infrastructure. And part of that funding, I just wanted to let people know, is going to be coming from the cap and trade through the province. So I just wanted to make you aware. We were wondering how it was going to come back to our community, and this is one of the ways that it's coming back to our community. So part of that funding is coming from the cap and trade program.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Etherington, seconded by Councillor Schneider, that the bylaws listed on the agenda for third reading be taken as read a third time, be finally passed, and numbered serially by the clerk. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we are just about to complete our final meeting of 2017, which has been our nation's 150th birthday. I guess to all those here, as well as all those in the viewing audience, whether you're celebrating Hanukkah beginning tomorrow, Christmas, Kwanzaa, or just the holiday season over the coming weeks, from all of us here, a very happy holiday season and a happy, healthy, and prosperous 2018. A reminder that we will have our traditional family-oriented New Year's Eve celebration here on December the 31st at City Hall, and we will have our annual New Year's levy on Sunday, June the 7th from 1:30 to Sunday, January the 7th, 2018 from 1:30 to 4 p.m. And with that, motion to adjourn. Councillor Singh, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.